Hello again, and welcome back to Mr. Rowley's Virtual Music Classroom. Today's lesson is going to be the second lesson in the composition series. In the first lesson, we created an 8-bar melody. It's the beginnings of a piece of music. And today we're going to learn how to harmonize that melody. So as we travel along through our journey as a composer, today we're going to talk about those other notes in a piece of music that aren't the melody. Remember, if there are concepts, especially music theory concepts, that you don't understand as you go through this lesson, please remember that you can refer back to the music theory lessons on things like chords and scales. The ones that we're using mostly during this lesson are chords. So if you don't have a good understanding of simple chords and triads in a major or minor key, you might want to check that lesson out. It's Music Theory Lesson 6.1. So first, let's take a listen and a look at the melody that we composed, just so we can get it back in our heads. So now you'll notice that I've added a set of measures or bars underneath the melody for a piano part. Now this isn't necessarily going to be a piano part, but we're going to use the piano to help us with the harmonization process. In my songwriting lessons, I use the guitar. In this, I'm going to use the piano for different reasons. When we get to the arranging lesson, I'll talk more about this. This may not end up being a solo with piano accompaniment like it looks like on the page right now. However, it could. And that's why I want to have that set up for that possibility in the future. Today, we're just going to add chords to the melody and add a harmonic rhythm that makes sense to us. So when we are adding chords, the first thing we need to do is decide what chord goes with certain groups of notes. We also then have to decide what our harmonic rhythm is going to be. And harmonic rhythm is how fast or at what rhythm the harmony changes. It could change every beat, so then the harmony would be a quarter, the harmonic rhythm would be a quarter note harmonic rhythm. Maybe we want to change the chords every 2 beats. Then the harmonic rhythm would be half notes. Or we could change them every measure, and that would be a harmonic rhythm of whole notes. That's what harmonic rhythm means. It doesn't necessarily match the rhythm of the melody. It's just as the harmony changes, what is the rhythm of those harmonic changes. Then we decide which notes in the melody dictate what chord should go underneath it or go with it. And then we also need to make sure that the chords work together with each other and make musical and harmonic sense. So let's take the first measure. The first measure has the notes B, C, D, and E flat. And it's actually B flat, C, D, and E flat. And the strong beat of 1 and 3 are the B flat and the D. So that tells me that that is probably a B flat chord that goes underneath that measure. So let's go ahead and put a B flat chord underneath there, and I'm going to put it with the root of the chord in the bass, and then a triad in the right hand of the piano part. Okay, and then we're going to take a listen to it. Okay, with the D being still in the B flat chord, I don't think the harmony needs to change. Now we might come back and look at that again in a minute, but right now I think we're going to go with the harmonic rhythm being based around half notes and whole notes. And this one's a whole note. So from there we'll see how it develops. The other thing I need to do is I want to make sure I keep track of what I'm doing with the harmonies. So I'm going to go down here, and I know that the key of this is B flat. I made that determination. I made the determination of what the key was for this piece of music when we wrote the melody. Now it's just a matter of writing in the chords. So we know that first one is the B flat chord, which is the tonic chord. The next measure has F, G, F, G, F. Now, the G's are just what we call upper neighbors. They're not necessarily chord tones. And they're on very weak beats because they're on the and of one and the and of two, or the second half of beat one and the second half of beat two. The F's are the dominant note in that measure. So I don't want to keep the same chord. So do I want to go to a 5 chord, which is F, A, and C? That would make sense. Or do I want to do a more simple, less powerful chord than the dominant chord or the 5 chord and go with another chord that has an F in it? So the other chords that have F in them are D, F, A, which is a minor 3 chord, and the 1 chord, B flat, D, F. I'm not liking the 3 chord. I'm not a 3 chord person, and I don't think it would fit really, really well here because of what happens next. So I'm going to think we're going to go with the 5 chord, which is the F chord. So we're going to add that here. And take a listen. That makes sense. It works really well. It's a simple chord progression, 1, 5. And on top of that, we have to remember what our audience is and who this is written for. This is written for a middle level player, and our audience could be like a recital or solo ensemble or something like that. We don't completely know yet. So we don't want to make it necessarily really, really complex. So the next measure has the notes C, D, E flat, F. So the C could be the 2 chord, and that makes some sense for us. It follows the 5 chord. That's not normally where a 5 chord would go. A 5 chord would normally go to 1, but that doesn't necessarily show itself in the melody notes. Yes, there's a D and an F there, but they are both on weak beats. The C and the E flat are on strong beats. So to me, I'm going to build the chord around that C and E flat. So I could build it on a 2 chord, which is C, E flat, G. It's a minor chord. I could also make it a 7 chord, A, C, E flat. That doesn't make a lot of sense because a 7 chord doesn't really sound like a 7 chord, especially following a 5 chord. It's going to sound like the 5 chord without the bass note. So I don't like that either. It would work, but it's not necessarily stylistically correct. And the other chord that would work with it is the 5 chord, which we just used in the previous measure. So I'm thinking let's go with the 2 chord. But one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the 2 chord in the right hand, but I'm not going to put the C or the tonic of that chord or the bass note in that chord. I'm not going to make it the C. I'm going to make it the E flat, which makes it what we call a 2-6 chord, or a 2 chord in first inversion, which we haven't talked about inversions yet in our music theory, but we will. And also what I'm doing is I'm keeping the chords as triads right now. At this point, I'm not going to put any 7s on it. I might put a 7 on towards the end of the phrase. So this is a 2 chord with a little 6 on it. Next measure, G, A, G, F, and then E flat. All right, so the E flat chord, which this measure ends on the E flat, is E flat, G, B flat. Well, there's 2 G's on beat 1 and beat 2, and the A is upper neighbor and the F is a passing tone, so those aren't important notes necessarily in the melody. So you focusing on the chord having the E flat and the G in it. So if we want to do just an E flat chord, that's pretty easy. It's also set up by the previous chord because the bass note in the first inversion of the 2 chord is also E flat. So that can kind of be a common tone. And then we just go from there, make it into a 4 chord. Is that all we want though? What else could be built around those G's? Well, you have the 6 chord. G, B flat, D. And then go to the E flat. That's not a bad idea. So let's listen to it with just the E flat chord, and then we'll try putting in the 6th chord, or excuse me, yeah, the 6th chord, the G chord, and see which one we like better. So here it is with just the E flat chord, the 4 chord. Here's what it sounds like that way. It works very nicely. The harmonic rhythm now is the same. We can change that though. So let's try this. So now we have a 6 chord and then a 4 chord in that measure using half notes for our harmonic rhythm. And let's see what that sounds like now. I'm kind of liking that. I like that inflection of the 6th chord there. It makes sense to me. All right, let's go on. D, E flat, F, C. Oh, this kind of makes it seem like another half note harmonic rhythm, because the D and the E flat could be a 1 chord possibly, and the F and the C could be a 5 chord. So let's take a listen and see what might work. So after a 4 chord could go back to a 1 chord, no problem. It is G, C, B flat, D, F. So here's the. And then we have FAC. See what that sounds like. Now, because we have the harmonic series set up, and I like what just happened, these next 3 measures being a sequence, which we talked about in the lesson 1, and creating this feeling of the same but going up a step, we have to keep the harmonic rhythm the same too. In other words, for it to, well, we don't have to do anything, but in order to set that sequence up and to make that feeling happen, I think the half note harmonic rhythm will be the best. So let's go ahead and do the next 2 measures with that in mind. So the next one we have E flat, F, G, D. So the E flat, F, it'll be a what they call a retrograde progression if we use a 4 chord, but maybe we don't use a 4 chord. Maybe we use a 2 chord instead. C, E flat, G. That works. And we're going to keep it in first inversion again, so the E flat's in the bass. And then the next one is G and D. Well, going to a 6, that'll work. 2, 6 going to 6. That's the GBD chord. Again, E flat, might work, but the E flat and the D conflict with each other. So I kind of like the 6th chord. So let's take a look. G, D, and B flat. Now let's take a listen to that. See if we like it so far. I'm liking it. Next measure, F, G, A, E flat. Well, that whole measure sets up what we call the 5-7 chord, because the 5-7 chord would be F, A, C, and E flat. But I think I want to do something a little bit different to set up the last measure. So the 6th chord goes to F and G. It could go back to 1. That might sound kind of interesting, a 1 chord there. And then the 2 chord, C, E flat, G, B flat. It's got an A there. What's that going to sound like? So the 2 chord goes really nicely to the 5 chord, which I think will be the next one. So let's try it. Let's see what happens. So if we go... So I did something different there too, which again we haven't got to a music theory yet. So we could add a 7th note chord, what we call a 7th, to the 2 chord, C, E flat, G, B flat, and it works with what we're doing. If I put it in first inversion, it might even be better. Put the B flat down here. And that A is really high in the flute, so it shouldn't cause a problem. So let's see what it sounds like. We may not like it, but then again, we just might. So this one's a 2, 6, 5. Which means it's a 2-7, C, E flat, G, B flat. It's got the 7th, the B flat, but it's in first inversion, so the E flat is the lowest sounding note. And again, let's take a listen and see what it sounds like. So I'm not sure about it yet. I think I'm going to change one note here. I'm going to change, there's no C in there. We'll put it there. Let's listen to it again. Chord sounds really weak, and there's a reason for that. And again, we haven't gotten to this in our music theory, but there's something happening here that makes it weak sounding. The B flat to the C, right here, you can see my cursor moving, and the F to the G, right here, F to G inside the chord up on the right hand of the piano, are what we call parallel fifths. And that's not good voice leading. It makes it sound very weak. And now I put this in first inversion, but maybe I don't want it in first inversion. So I'm going to take this C, I'm going to put it back down here. And I'm just going to get rid of those higher notes there, since beforehand we didn't have high notes. That's probably going to sound a little better, but let's see what happens. I think that's better, but let's go ahead and finish it off, because I kind of already can kind of feel what's going to happen. So the next group of notes, F, E flat, D, C. The F, E flat, and C all make a really nice 5/7 chord. There's the F, E flat, A, C. And then ending on a 1 chord. So by using the F, A, C, E flat 5/7 chord in the first half of the last measure, and then ending on the tonic or the B flat chord, I think this works really, really well. Let's take a listen to it one more time. It works. It actually works very, very well. All right. I think we got this. So when harmonizing a melody, the first thing we need to do is just add the chords. We're not worried about all other notes or rhythms that go along with it, other than the harmonic rhythm. And the harmonic rhythm usually is a fairly simple thing. So far, in both the songwriting series and this series, we're only dealing with whole notes or half notes when it comes to harmonic rhythm. So the chords in this particular piece are either a whole note underneath or along with a group of notes from the melody, or half notes. That's it. The other thing that we're doing is we're looking at the notes in the melody and making a decision on which notes we want to emphasize within the chord. Now I've kept it pretty simple in this one. Whereas strong beats in a 4/4 type signature, that's the beats 1 and 3. What pitches are those? How do the other pitches around those pitches, how are they functioning? I use the word passing tones or neighbor tones, or upper and lower neighbor tones. And made the decision on what notes I wanted to emphasize in the chord. For instance, when you go D, E flat, F, G, there's different ways to look at that. The D and the F are on the strong beats, and the chord B flat, D, F would be the one to choose. That's the tonic chord. Now the E flat and the G, they're part of the 4 chord, yes, but they're on weak beats, and they're functioning as passing tones in this particular piece. So there's, again, a lot of decisions that you're trying to make. And there's, again, not really any right or wrong answers. You need to go with what your ear tells you, what your brain and what your feeling is in the music. There are a lot of different ways to harmonize this particular melody. I only showed you one of them. In the next lesson, we'll take that melody and that harmony and decide how we're going to arrange this. Arranging a piece of music has even more options to it. And again, we'll talk about that in the next lesson, which will be how we arrange this particular piece. Also in the next lesson, I will have expanded the piece into a full-fledged piece of melodic piece. Right now it's only 8 measures. I don't know if it's going to create a new form. It's going to be ABA, 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 whatever. There could be all different kinds of ways that I could continue and fulfill this piece into a complete work. And we'll talk about that in the next lesson. Again, as I stated earlier, if there were any parts of this lesson that you didn't understand from a music theory perspective, such as chords, please check with the music theory lessons. The lesson on chords is the music theory lesson 6.1. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope you learned a little bit. It's just one of the many steps in composition. You've written a melody or part of a melody. You've harmonized that melody or part of melody. And then what's next is arranging, like I just talked about. I hope you're enjoying your journey as a composer, and I hope to see you again on another lesson. Thank you. Again, thank you for coming to Mr. Rowley's virtual music classroom, and I hope you learned something. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.